I can't worry about anyone else. People do whatever they want to do. This is what we can do, and this is what's in our ability to control. You can only control what you can control, and everything beyond that is kind of irrelevant.
We've kind of moved into this sort of format accidentally of having someone share with us, and we've had some ace people, and today is no exception. So I'd like to welcome Seb.
Hello. This is my 20th year now in Manchester. Ran away to university. So now I did business studies, and then I spent 10 years in property development. So I was fortunate to get my job. One, because it was 2008 when I was looking for a job. So the height of the recession.
In property development?
Yeah.
Wow.
I applied to 54 people.
Your timing's impeccable, isn't it?
I know, what can I say? Well, I graduated, what can I do? So I wrote to 54 development companies. 2 wrote back. One said, "Are you fucking mental?" The second one said, "We've obviously got nothing. If you try this company, this company, this company, if you found nothing in 6 months, drop me a line." Obviously found nothing. And then
those who don't know, perhaps a bit younger or whatever, that we had a significant crash in the market.
Yeah, about 30 house
in
prices dropped by
2007.
about 30% in the space of 2 months.
Property wasn't the game to be in 2008.
No, or building, or carpets, or furniture. So he literally, and then so I met him in the February, and then we basically dated effectively once a month. I'd go and see what he was working on, and then he'd send me house plans, and I'd sort of redraw them. And then I worked with him for just shy of 10 years before I started what we're going to talk about next, I assume.
Okay, well, segue into that.
Well, look at that.
How, where does that start, and where does the transition start?
So, for those that don't know, I'm from the Spirit of Manchester Distillery. So we literally have our distillery round the corner. We make this as one of our products, Manchester Gin. Where did it start? It started drinking, if we're being brutally honest. I always say it started in 2013, which is when I was out at 1:30 on a Wednesday morning. So it was a school night, but I was out with 2 friends. They instantly started chatting up 2 women. I got really bored, and unfortunately I uttered the immortal words, "I'm going to go speak to the nearest unattended woman." And I know it's horrible. I turned, and there sat my future wife. I walked over, she knows the story. She was in the story.
Good. I'm glad. That's a plot twist we don't know. Go on.
Well, I didn't know that I'd tell this story 10,000 times, but you can't take the words back. So our brand's built around a love story, and that's how it started, unfortunately. So it's 1:30 on the Wednesday morning. The first thing I said to her is, "What are you drinking?" And the first thing she ever said to me was gin and tonic. And I mocked her instantly because we're in a rum tiki bar, and that started off a huge conversation and sort of culminated at about 2 a.m. with Jen saying, "My favourite gin's Monkey 47. And I, again, famously said, "I've got a bottle at home. So take from that what you will." We're still not sure whether I did or didn't have one. But and then that started, our first date was at Atlas Bar, which is literally there, because that was I used to live on City Road East, she used to live on Liverpool Road, so that was the bar in between. Our first date, we stole the menu, went through the whole, in 3 dates, trying to go through the whole menu. And then in 2015, we, having fallen madly in love by this point, we wanted to own a company together, so we were going to do what all sort of late 20-somethings do, going to open a bar. In researching opening a bar, I was put in touch with the guy in Sheffield, who was taking around all of his bar operations, and in one back room that was 2 meters by 2 meters, no window, there was a man sat on a stool making gin, a little pot still, and that was our sort of proverbial light bulb moment where we thought, we could do that. And that's literally where it started. So on the train on the way home, registered all the domain names, started applying for licenses, trademark in the wrong class to start with. You can't make industrial solvent alcohol called Manchester Gin. We own that trademark.
Polish your metalwork.
But ultimately, because I always say a combination of many factors, the main being we had piss all money. we started our distillery in our dining room. So our dining room was 3 meters by, still is 3 meters by 4 meters. And that's where we set the first distillery up. And yeah, just cracked on and I'd worked full time, came home, distilled through the night. We'd put the still on at 7 at night, go to bed at 11, get up at 2, get up at 4, get up at 6, turn it off at 7, go to work, come home, clean it, bottle, label, literally rinse and repeat. And I think in the first 50 months we produced just over 25,000 bottles of gin from this tiny little room. So
Your dining table.
yeah, it was hell on earth.
But you weren't planning on doing 25,000 bottles?
No, we planned on doing 100 a week. By the end of, I still have our business plan. By the end of year one, we wanted to do 100 a week, which meant that we had this fantasy of just on a Sunday putting the still on, we've lived in Chorlton, so around the corner from the Barbican. So we're going to get meat, cheese and bread, buy the papers, leisurely relax and just watch some gin be made. And yeah, it soon spiraled out of control, so yeah. Which is a good thing, but...
Amazing. So the name, the brand, was from the off, from the...
Yeah, listen, I mean, I constantly say wherever I go in the world, Manchester is the greatest city in the world, if it didn't fucking rain every day.
So what we see here, how much has that evolved? Like and talk us through building the brand.
So, you won't know the story. So the first time so I used to, with my old property development job, we'd build anything from 5 to 50 houses on a site, and each site would need to be branded differently. So I was used to doing sort of online, like there's like forums where you put a tender up there and people will design it. So we did that originally for Manchester Gin, and because we weren't telling anyone, because we're really secretive. This is 2015 now, and the sort of gin market sort of growing. So me and my wife thought we designed this amazing. It's awful, the fucking brand we first came out with. So it's always had a B on, and because obviously it's a symbol of the city, but the M went down a lot further, and then there was like a sort of almost like cartoon B that was the spike of it. It was fucking awful. But we were so like in it, and we hadn't shown anyone. And I went on a football. I say football not out. I play football like once a year. But I was out with some of my mates, and a guy who I'd met like twice. And it's like 12 now. We've been drinking quite heavily. And I showed him my other mate, and he was, oh yeah, it's all right, that. And then this guy's leaned over and went, that's shit. And I was like, sorry, what? And he was like, that's shit. And I was like, stop saying it. But he kept saying, and at about 1 in the morning, he's like, I could fucking do better than that. And then walked off somewhere. And then so I woke up the next day, hung over, and looked at it. I was like, and I called my wife Poppet. I was like, Poppet, is it shit? So we looked at it some more, and it turns out it was terrible. And so I spoke to my other friend, and this guy called Sam Yao used to work at the BBC and used to help design their in-app something or other. I'm still not sure what it does. But ultimately, I rang my mate and to get this guy's number, and we sat down in, can't remember the bar's now called, on Thomas Street, went through all the things we wanted. Albeit this is like custom glass and it's got hexagons. Pretty much if you see our original brand, it had a label that was square with these hexagons in copper, but I would say that design has not changed since 2016. Albeit the label's now been integrated and embossed through the glass. But yeah, that is the exact brand, the B, the typeface, yeah, the colour, which we stole from Four Pillars, if you know that gin, Australian gin. But yeah, that design has not changed one jot. And
what was the sort of rationale behind arriving at that, or
well, I mean,
did you work with him, or? So
we went with it, and it was all about having the nod to Manchester. So the hexagons obviously all form back to the worker bee and everything else. And I think it had to be clean, it had to be crisp, far away from the cartoon nonsense we'd originally designed. And it has to be timeless, because genuinely, and the love story that's written on the back of the bottle, my wife, and I think I'm quoting it directly, says, no one fucking cares. But we always set out to fail effectively. And I always said that, we said that at worst I'd have 100 bottles of gin that we wanted to drink and a really expensive ornament in the shape of a still. And the reason for me having the love story in the back is that if it didn't go anywhere, it's something to show that it was truly us. And if it does go somewhere, then, it sort of synonymizes us and us with the brand. And I think when we're designing brands now, like we're designing we have designed a new whiskey brand, Well, the reason I went into property development is because I wanted to build buildings that outlived me, and I've been fortunate enough to do that. Unfortunately, the distillery, which is the most money I've ever spent on one building, won't outlive me because the lease isn't that. Well, I hope it doesn't anyway. Because otherwise, I'm going to die in like 6 years. But yeah, you've got. So now we build brands to outlive us, and it's about making it timeless, making it. And I think that's what's really exciting to us about building a brand, that you have to constantly be looking to the future, but also make sure that you're not having to constantly evolve it. So, so yeah.
So it did go better than 100 bottles.
It did go better than 100 bottles, yeah.
How do you, in a year, go from a standing start to 25,000 bottles? Because that strikes me as extraordinary.
Yes and no, I suppose. I think the only way for us, and we still use the same sort of mantra to how to grow the business now, is liquid to lips. Like, we went out, I can tell you the date, it was the 12th of May 2016, it was a Thursday. I finished work, I took a half a day off work, and I took the Friday off. I had to drive to Preston to pick the labels up. So we literally labelled the first 7, the first probably 10 or 12, just to get us out of the house. And it's at this point we realised we didn't have cardboard boxes to put them in. We thought, so if anyone that knows Chorlton, you'll know the Unicorn supermarket, and everyone's got, if you haven't got a Unicorn shopping bag in Chorlton, you're not really from Chorlton. So luckily 6 bottles fitted into that bag. So off we trotted like absolute maniacs with our hemp bag and 6 bottles of Manchester gin, and went to Tiny's Tipple, which is still there now. And they were the first ever people. And we talked to the guy at the White, because we obviously bought a lot of wine and gin and everything else. We'd been to him for months saying we're making our own gin, and he's like, yeah. And then finally went in and presented it, and our first ever purchase was 1 whole bottle. And then he said, "Can I get a sample bottle?" And we had a half bottle. And we're like, "Fuck!" So we've only got 100. So left him a sample bottle and literally got, I would say, literally 50 seconds down the road, and he called me and said, "I've just sold it." So went back in, and the first ever bottle actually went to South Africa. Because a woman was in there, she was flying out of Manchester that day or that evening or whenever it was, and to go and see her dad who just moved to South Africa, who was staunch Mancunian. So yeah, the first ever bottle went there, but then we spent the whole of Friday going around every single bar we could in Manchester, not realising that we since know it now. But when you go in and say, "I've got something for you to try," everyone says yes, but then they get 3 glasses out. So at 11 in the morning, I'm trying my own product again. And then you go to the next bar and it's 11:30 and they get 3 glasses out. And you're like, fuck. This is only going to end one way, isn't it? It ended in El Gato Negro. It was hammered at 4. Gave the bottle to them to make loads of cocktails. They ended up stocking us for ages. But it's all about knocking on doors, and it's about... And it's it's the way you have to do it. If you believe in the product you make, you put it in front of as many people as possible. And if you're truly passionate about it, that's how you sell more, ultimately. We didn't do the Kevin Costner thing and sit in front of him and say, "We built it, someone will come." No, you have to literally get out there every day, and it's still to this day, knocking on doors. It's changed now. We have to go to trade shows, and we have to go, I'm flying out to Berlin on Monday to basically pester people to try and make them buy it. It's a lot harder now, but ultimately it's liquid to lips, knocking on doors, and, putting it in front of people's faces.
A real hustle.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it at the time. It just felt, and I think we're fortunate that I always say the best for. I mean, terrible saying this to freelancers because I assume you all work independently. I couldn't own a business without a second person in it. Someone that you can confide in, someone that you share the responsibility of every decision. So our whole business motto, and it's written into our manuals that given out to every member of staff, is "fuck it." And that is what we live by in our business, that we look at each other, we make a decision, and we go, "Fuck it, let's do it." And then you do it. And then there's no sort of recourse back to, "We shouldn't have done that." We used to start, we couldn't spend £100 without telling each other. And then obviously there's the business agreement. That wasn't sensible. But we still come back to that whole thing that we both agree everything, and then no one's responsible for that decision. So it means you can make mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake without going shit, and then not doing anything, is what I'd say.
I think we call it test and learn.
Is it?
I quite like that. That first, this won awards pretty
Yeah, we're super
prestigious, right?
fortunate.
So it wasn't just a hustle; it was good.
No, I mean, yeah, it's one of the most awarded gins in the world, and the recipe's changed by 4 grams since its inception. I think, I mean, Jen is known as the bloodhound in our business. So the way we make gins now, and the way we make new whiskies and new products and everything we make, it was originally me that would do it all, and then I'd finally present it to Jen, and then I'd be told it wasn't good enough, and then go back and forth and back. But now I've got a head distiller, so I'll set a brief to him. He'll present. For argument's sake, 10. I'll say there's 3 worth going forward. Change this, change this, change this. It'll go back again. It'll come back. Then after 2 or 3 iterations of that, we'll take us to bloodhound, and then she'll tell us to start again. And that's how we've done it. But this, yeah, I mean, we're from our dining room. We won. So the Spirit Masters is a bit like the BAFTAs. So we won a gold there, which is the top award you can win. The IWS, no, well, San Francisco's like what's the one above the BAFTAs? The Golden Globes. We won double gold there, which is the top award, and then we went over to the IWSC, which is like the Oscars, and it won gold. So scored 97.5 out of 100, and that's all from the dining room. Our dining room was, I think, the smallest distillery to ever win a gold medal from distilling. As a distillery, because we got a gold, because we got 2 golds in one setting for 2 products, and so the Spirit Masters gave us. I don't think they knew it was a dining room, if I'm honest with you. But yeah, we're super fortunate with that. But I think that helps you grow the business a little bit. But ultimately, it's it's more important people buy it and love it themselves than someone else telling them it's good.
We'll talk about scaling and
Yep.
What came after that first 25,000 bottles in a second. But there's probably 3 notable characters in Manchester Gin. There's you, there's Jen, and there's Dee Dee.
Dee Dee, head of morale.
Tell us about Dee Dee.
So it's a sad story how we got Dee Dee.
Well, exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, Manchester Gin's first birthday, we were obviously riding high. I think I was in the process of quitting my job. So Jen quit her job after 3 months to run the business. I quit mine after 13. So I'd already handed my notice in. So I was working my notice. Through a huge party at BCD, if you know it. It was there. I was there screwing the floorboards in and painting the bloody skirting boards. I would say 15 minutes before people got into the door. So through a big party, then we got home 3, 4 in the morning. Unfortunately, found a pool of blood at the door, and it was our cat that had been hit by a car. Florence. So that was the name of our first ever still. Our development still was called Florence. She had a Twitter handle called Distillery Cat, and around this sort of time, she got an interview. The cat, got an interview request from Japan. Someone was going to fly over from Japan and interview the cat. It's a genuine true story for Cat magazine in Japan, and they were going to fly from Japan to Manchester to interview the cat. And then she would literally, and we were going back and forth about it all, and then we had to email saying, I'm really sorry, the cat's died. The story's gone. But that, because at this point we had moved distillery to Temperance Street, and we were probably there 16, 17 hours a day. And it wasn't really fair on the cat, and so we loved having a creature in our lives. And I think we lasted about 6 weeks where the house was just quiet. I mean, we've got a child now, so it's never quiet anymore. But then we went to Cheshire Dogs Home and saw this beautiful abandoned dog that had been left at Warrington train station, that scrawny little thing with pointy ears. Jen, and I always tell this story now, because Jen wanted to leave her there. I was like, no. In the end, we took her. So she's called Dee Dee, but her long name is Distillery Dog. And so we've made a gin inspired by going on walks with her. Our vermouth, she's embossed on the label. So, but yeah, she comes to work every day. She'll be in work as we speak now. So, chief guard dog. She'll bark. She's very loud, but then she's wagging her tail. It's 2 polar opposites from head to toe. But yeah, she's head of morale in the business. So she just runs around the business. She's loud anywhere. She's never on a lead. So we think she was a homeless dog, because she knows the foot. Of day 2, I did what you're supposed to do when you get a dog. Go to the pub. I don't know what Jen was doing, so I went to the pub on my own with my new dog on lead. Did some work. That's work, by the way. Did some work, and then on the way home, having had 2 or 3 beers, I was like, I'm sure she'll be fine. Unclipped her. And that's from that moment on, she doesn't go on a lead. Apart from if we go in the centre, because we keep getting £100 fines. Didn't know that was a thing. It's a real thing. in the city centre for having your dog off a lead. But yeah, she comes everywhere. She's amazing. So yeah, Dee Dee. If you walk past the building, if you get too close to the glass, she will bark at you.
But if you go in, she'll just...
She'll come for strokes. Yeah.
So let's talk about the journey after that. You moved to Temperance Street.
Yeah.
Scale things up.
Yeah.
How long were you there for?
We moved to Temperance Street September 2017. So that's after about 15 months. We were there for about... Well, we finally moved Distillery over in September 2019. So just over 2 years, I suppose. But we were sort of in the transition period. Temperance Street's amazing. It's the road, well, it's the railway track that leads to London from Manchester to Piccadilly. It used to had a few more breweries than it does now, but I think it was known as Brewers Mile. It had like I think 15, 16 breweries on there. So we were the first distillery to go into there. And it's a really amazing place during the day. Everyone's, you can walk down to any brewery and have a chat and just general natter. So we stayed there. I mean, we grew the business. There was, again, only me and Jen in the business then. So we ended up having, I think from that side, there's probably 7 or 8 of us working out of that building. And then we always wanted a customer-facing distillery. You could not bring customers down there at night. Because we're very proud of what we're doing. We've always distilled, bottled, labelled everything. And, as far as we're concerned, if you call it Manchester Gin, you have to do it here. You have to, it has to be staunchly what you say it is. And so we always wanted a glass-fronted distillery that effectively you can just press your nose against the glass. You don't spend any money with us. You'll see the stills. You'll see us using them. You'll see it's not a front. You'll see that it's all done here. Or similarly, you can come in, have a drink, or go the whole hog and make your own bottle of gin. So that was always the sort of vision for the business. When we were looking for a site, we always had to go in with like a laser measurer because the still's 4.6 meters tall, give or take. And so you'd be looking around different premises and, you'd have estate agents tell us how it was amazing. And you'd measure and you go, no, it's 4.2. And they'd still try and sell you the building. I was like, it doesn't fit. This isn't a design feature. It's an absolute necessity. So the first site we were going to have, which I'm glad we didn't get in the end, was opposite Tariffindale. So in the northern quarter, there's, I think it's another grade 2 listed building. It's got an amazing double doors that are open like green doors. So we're going to glaze the front of that and put the still in the window. And it was like a basement sort of speakeasy bar. We got outbid by an IT company. I was raging. Apparently they had a better covenant than us. But in the end,
so you, because your timing's impeccable, you moved to this new space when?
Well, we borrowed just shy of $1 million, put in $500,000 of our own money, which is all the money we'd ever made in our entire lives. And we opened in September 2019, employed 64 members of staff, and then we were open for 3.5 months, 4 months. So that was fun. Yeah. I very vividly remember crying into the fridge. What happened? Summit in China.
I'm aware of what happened, but what happened for you?
Oh, for us it's terrible. Like, we were, on this sort of huge rise and this huge thing that we'd spent everything on. And yeah, it's terrible. I remember crying into my freezer that night I had my father-in-law round at the house. I'm not sure why he was there, but my wife had spent 4 hours crying, watching the news. I went to the fridge to make myself the world's largest rum. I think it's about that much rum. And I remember just crying into the freezer. My father-in-law going, "You okay?" And trying to just go, "Yeah." It was horrible. And it was horrible for 2-3 months. And I think after getting over all the initial pain of it, and, I was really fortunate. Our landlord, Sean Hines, who's the CEO of Manchester Central, was amazing. So unfortunately, I was actually driving to my grandma's funeral the day after. So the Monday, the 16th of March, Boris said, "Do not go to bars and restaurants. You cannot go," but then didn't put anything in place. So there was no furlough. Furlough was announced on Friday. I know these time them quite well. So on the Monday, it was like, don't go in, you shouldn't go near them, but we're not officially closing them, so we don't have to offer any support. And that was on the Monday. The Tuesday, I was driving to my grandma's funeral. She was Irish and she died a couple of weeks before. So I was driving to Blackpool. I had my brand new, not these ones, but different Jordan green ones, because you have to wear something green because she's Irish and that's what you do to an Irish funeral. And yeah, I spoke to the bank, who was amazing. So NatWest were amazing. John's left there now, but it was like, we'll worry about the debt later. Just don't worry, we'll assume there's no payments happening. And Sean similarly said, because effectively our biggest two outlays, beyond the staff, obviously. And then, Sean said, we won't need a discussion for at least 4, 5, 6 months. And ultimately, in 18 months, I think I paid 3 months' rent. Didn't accrue any debt, didn't accrue. Wow. So he's been amazing. So, I've always got a lot of time for Sean. He gets a lot of gin. Any bribery I can say, don't film that bit. But yeah, I think what happened next is, though, and I think it happened for a lot of people, is just the malaise of not doing anything. Like, my wife was busy, she would furlough, when furlough came on the Friday, she was busy every week, every month, 64 members of staff, having to, keep morale and everything. I ran a distillery that didn't produce anything,
And did you stop producing?
Well, we 85-90% of our products is sold to bars and restaurants. So, they all locked the doors. We had enough stock lying around, and it was actually Sean from Manchester Central who called me after about, I think it was about 4 or 5 weeks. And all I'd done is basically start drinking at 11 every day, because there's nothing else to do. If my little boy was having lunch, I'd be like, well, if he's having lunch, I can surely start having a beer. And I had nothing to do. I had no motivation to do anything. And then they were opening up the Nightingale Hospital above us, and we got a call on the Friday before they opened. So they opened on the Friday. We got a call on the Friday from Sean saying, do you have any alcohol around? I was like, well, it's funny you should say that. And ultimately, they couldn't get hold of any hand sanitizer, and they guaranteed the government they'd be open by, I think it was 2 p.m. on the next Friday. And so that gave me a bit of impetus to go and do some things. I felt like I was doing some good, and repurposed all the kit, figured out how to make hand sanitizer, got enough glycerin and hydro something. You need 5% of that in there. I'm not even sure what it does. And then so read it up, boiled it up, and managed to deliver sanitizer to them, I think at 12 on the Friday. And it was they couldn't get plastic bottles. They would, you could have been paying 10 quid for a plastic bottle. Now you can get them for like 3p. I've still got 10,000 left if anyone wants any. It's a true story, that as well. But yeah, so that gave us an impetus to go and do something. So we actually started making sanitizer. Stupidly, we agreed at the time to make no money from it, which in hindsight we probably shouldn't have done, because we definitely lost loads of money on that. But we wanted to look back, and I think we still sort of say the same thing, that we're a distillery. And when I remember going up there on that Friday, and we're seeing erecting these huge tankers, and we're like, what's all that? It's like, it's full of oxygen. No, oh.
So just for the benefit of anyone who doesn't know, the Nightingale Hospital is where they converted Manchester Central
into an emergency hospital for people to go and die in, effectively.
For COVID.
Yeah. And then when I went up there again, there was a huge tent, like this massive marquee, and I was like, oh, is that for ambulance arriving? They were like, no, that's the morgue. And so it sort of brought, obviously it was never really used. I think they only served like 280 patients, I think, in total. But it was never used. But it was that point you're like, oh shit, yeah, okay, fair enough. And so we supplied hospitals, doctors, Christie's.
But you have had this ethos of making in Manchester, suppliers being local as far as possible. Mm-hmm. Talk to us about that and just kind of the passion for keeping things.
Well, I think it's important. I think ultimately you can't be, again, we're locally produced, so we would like to think that other bars want to stock us because we're made around the corner, and I think you've got to share that, in the restaurant, everyone's locally sourced. And I think it's about basically sharing what you can. I mean, 2 of our dedicated beer lines are to local breweries, and it's about sharing that wealth in terms of we're a shop window for us, but also other sort of local brands, and then similarly, hopefully, they reciprocate with us. So I think it's important to do that. And yeah, I think when you're staunchly Manchester, you don't really want the sort of, we've taken no deals at our bar, and we don't, someone would have, Diageo and whoever would have given us 50, 60, 70, 80 grand towards the fit out. But that's not, we are, again, staunchly independent, for better or for worse. Me and we often joke about it. We own all of our own debt. So it's me and my wife, that's it. And come rain or shine, we still have to pay the bank, but we're not beholden to anyone, and we haven't been. There's a point where it looked like we might have to be, and that was another sad day. but no, you know, we own it, and you know, not many people. I remember when we first started in the dining room, people would say that it's impossible to make this there. You're clearly lying, and you're like, I can show you a photo. Like, this is, and you can
Give
come
it.
to
Just show us how big was that first stall?
Wendy. So is about this round. Well, she's at the base. She's 31 centimeters round. I know that for sure. But that round in the middle and about that tall off the ground. And yeah, that Wendy would produce 100 bottles of that every day.
And now, I mean, give us a scale of this room. How your
Well, there's still
stills
so
are
now so we've
twice
got
the height.
well, it's 4.6 meters tall. It's probably 1.8 meters wide. It's 1,000 litre still. Depending on what sort of ratio you want to fill to, so you can make anything from 1,400 to 8,000 bottles in one distillation run. You know, and a lot of our time now is spent, well, as I said to you before, is whiskey, and I think that's the future of English distilleries. But that's another giant money pit that may very well bankrupt us or might make us, and that's ultimately.
But that journey started, hasn't it? So when
That
can we
journey-
expect the first? Is the brand out there? Do we
It's
know?
1.6. So 1.6 is the, well, guys, you've got lots of creative people. It's the Fibonacci curve. So you know, the Mona Lisa is supposed to be one of the greatest pictures ever made, because from nose to eyebrow to cheek to chin is the Fibonacci curve. So 1 to 1.618 something. And it's also finding architecture, because for us, our whiskey brand is based around. We're not a traditional whiskey brand. We're not. There's no rolling hills. There's no stags. No tartan. You know, it's not about this amazing. You know, and all whiskies talk about how amazing their water is and blah blah blah. We're using, you know, Peckham Spring from the tap, because it goes through a full filtration system. That's all you need to use, and that's you. The water's not the most important thing. The thing you distill is the most important thing. So we're sort of throwing away all the sort of rules from whiskey and sort of remaking it whiskey in our image, in a city image. So it's about building a very modern brand that's it's very block formulaic, just to sort of reflect the city or reflect a city. So it's not. We could have called it Manchester whiskey, but again, I think we're limiting ourselves. Again, trying to grow a brand that outlives you. I think, you know, we've deliberately built the whiskey to be an international brand that hopefully will be around for 100 years plus. So,
But it does nod to Manchester.
yeah, well, 0161 is our area code, and it's called 1.6. So that is it's to be honest, it's a happy accident. If the Fibonacci curve was 1.7, we wouldn't have changed it. So,
Being
but these
called
are the
Birmingham whiskey,
yeah,
doesn't
these
it?
are the sort of happy sort of coincidences you get. But it's made in Manchester. We wouldn't move the distillery. My plan is to build a new dedicated whiskey distillery. And in the stills that we've shoehorned into Watson Street, we can make, if I was at absolute capacity, maybe 80,000 bottles a year. And that sounds like a huge, and it is a huge number, but you can't, if you make 80,000, you can't sell 80,000, if that makes sense. Because you've got to think about different future releases. You've got to think about an age one or this and that. So realistically, you can only release 60,000. If you look at English whiskey as a category, there's 42, 43 English whiskey distilleries right now. The first one was only around in 2008. So, you know, the heritage of English whiskey is very young. It accounts for 10% of what Macallan made last year, and there's 1,400 other distilleries in Scotland. So the scale is so vastly different north of the border. But I think what's happening here in England is, and the phrase is sort of New World whiskey. It's happening in Australia. It's happening in America a little bit as well. There's some amazing New World whiskies coming out, and I think the best way I can describe how ours is different to Scotch. Most part Scotch recipe was written in about in the 1970s, when it's called, and I won't get too anarchy, Distiller's Malt came out, which is still the highest yielding malt that we have for distilling. So basically, the more sugar you get, the more economical it is. The more you convert into alcohol, the more booze you get at the end of it. And so that was invented or propagated in sort of 1973, 74. In 1974, garlic wasn't available in supermarkets in this country. So if you look at how far the flavour profile has moved, but yet how that recipe's not changed. And I'm not saying Scotch whisky is bad. Listen, there's some amazing stuff out there. But if you want Scotch whisky, there is a shit ton of it. So go and drink that. Whereas what sort of New World whiskey is taking different barleys, different brewers malts rather than just distillers malts. Well, I mean, we're using Chardonnay white wine yeast to really give some. I have a flavour square, so it's up here, so it's like green and sort of tangy. But that's what's really exciting about the new world, is because we wrote a recipe. We finalised our recipe, and it'll be nearly a year ago, so in November last year, and that was designed for our palate, for today's palate, with all the nuances that we can taste. And I think, gin's been an amazing thing about teaching people about their own palate, because, in the 90s and noughties, I try and do it with wine, and my wife's much better. But, when people go, can you get all these amazing, fanciful flavours from wine? Like, not really. Tastes like wine. But whereas in gin, if someone says it's herbaceous, I can taste the sage, I can taste the mint, I can taste the oregano, or if it's citrus, you can taste the orange or the lemon or the lime. I think that's broadened people's knowledge of their own palate, and I think that will only translate into darker spirits. And whiskey now doesn't need to be 12 years old to taste good, and it's a fallacy, and it's only a fallacy because the people that have 12-year-old whiskey want that to be the fallacy. The liquid that goes into that barrel should be delicious, and the barrel should only complement the flavour, shouldn't be the domineering flavour of that. And that's where the market's going. And I think, if
we do this in 12 years, we'll see if it's the same.
I won't release a 12-year-old. My little boy's got barrel number 11 because he's born on the 11th of the 11th. So 11's our family number. I'm born on the 11th as well. My wife's born in November, so it literally ties it all together. But I've got videos of him filling barrel number 11. He will get that on his 30th birthday because it'll be a 25-year-old barrel of whiskey. But that'll probably be the only, and we won't release it to the world, it'll just be his. I hope he drinks. He's got a barrel of rum, a barrel of whiskey. He gets a bottle of Macallan every year. He's got a lot of booze. I mean, fuck it. I hope he doesn't drink, because I'll have it. But yeah, that's the only. You don't need that much time in the barrel, and that's what's really exciting about English whiskey. I think Japanese whiskey, everyone's heard about in the last 10 years. They've been distilling since 1874 or something. So they've been in the game for 120 years, and it's only the last 20 years, 15 years, it's come to prominence. In the next 10, you will all know multiple English whiskies, whether you like it or not, and you'll like them.
Especially 1.6.
On top of everything else, yeah.
You're a detail guy. Mm-hmm. So when you,
my wife would not say that.
Well, you're very specific about.
Oh, specific, yes.
But in creating that venue, which I mean, do go and check it out if you've not. Has anyone been? Do you want to describe it for us?
I love it.
It's kind of behind the Hilton. So if you walk. Under the arches.
So if you go round the Hilton and then you head towards Albert Schloss, so it's the road parallel to Deansgate. It's 6 Grade 2 star listed railway arches. So it forms part of effectively the foundations of Manchester Central. So that's why they're our landlord. But when we saw it in February 2018, they were all bricked up, and there's pictures in the distillery if you come in. All bricked up in between. So they were all little squares that were all leaking. Damp everywhere, mould, moss, awful, horrible things. But you can see the potential. I mean, when you come in, hopefully you'll see what we've done with the place. So yeah, when you say I'm a detail guy, design is what I spent 10 years, luckily with no training, designing houses, designing restaurants, designing apartment schemes for how I always find an architect designs the outside of a building. They do not give two shits what's inside it. They don't. It's amazing how terrible architects are inside buildings. They don't have any regard for how you walk around it, how the flow of people, and hopefully that's changing now. But they design the outside of a building and go, oh, amazing, put some rooms inside. But yeah, the distillery itself is, I love it. It's one long linear distillery. But yeah, so you've got our production, which is where our whiskey is made now, then the stills, the bar, the restaurant. But if you walk out the toilets, you've got a view down, I think 3 arches, and you see it's called the transverse arch, my favourite part of the building. But yeah, the idea is that, again, you can see the still from when you walk out. Anywhere in the building, you should be able to see the still pretty much. And that's about having that connection between the bar and the distillery.
And you had this rule about the last 5%.
Oh yeah, well, so and it's my old boss, sorry, I should say. My new boss is at work, working a lot harder than me. So when you in building and design, and it always goes over budget, and my old boss would always cut everything at the last minute. But I was a firm believer, and I managed to, throughout the 10 years I was there, to convince him. The last 5% of anything, any building, is 95% of the perceived value of that building. It doesn't matter how amazing the brickwork is behind there, or how amazing the plasterboard is, or how much the air conditioning costs, which ours cost £210,000. Far too expensive. But anyway, no one really gives a shit about that. It's the things they touch. So in a bar, it's the bar top, it's the stools, the tables, the door handles, and the toilets. That's it. And unfortunately, they're the last 5% to go in. And if you're already 30% over budget, it's the thing you cut down. And I think that's the thing that kills most buildings. It's the thing that's, for me, killed the factory. You know, that's a building that was projected to cost 90 million, cost 190 million, which is mental. 4 years over budget, and if you go in the toilets, they're shit. Like, but that's the thing you see, and that's the thing. No one cares that the angle of the building was so hard that the overhang and the cantilever that cost another 4 million. You see it in the round, but it's the things you touch and feel. And, you know, if you do come in our bar, everything's vastly overpriced. The toilets. My favourite detail I think I made.
You did.
Yeah, because no one spots it. So that's when he says I'm a detail person. In the design, that would have been easy to cut, but if in the toilets, the where the sinks are, the countertop, it's one piece of marble that started like that, but then they've chamfered the edges so the grains go down, and it's just my little detail. One of my favourite parts of the bar, but everyone just glosses over it, washes their hand, and goes out. So if you do go in, take a little minute to have a little look at that.
Maybe if you could take a photo and tag.
Yeah, say, God, the grain goes all the way through. It's like you folded it.
We're going to wrap up soon, but any questions from the floor?
Can I just ask you, like in the pandemic, did you not think about setting up a website or selling through maybe Amazon?
We did. So we broke the world record for the biggest virtual gin tasting, unofficial because they wanted 10 grand to verify it, which is nice of them. We did things like that, but the cost to
How many people were on the virtual?
I think it was at that point. So we were one of the first to sort of adopt. I think we had over 2,500 people on it, but that meant packaging up 1,100 sets. And bearing in mind, we're not a mass-produced building, so we had the miniatures. So we were filling 4,000 miniatures. So you got 4 different gins, you got 2 glasses, 4 tonics, and the idea was you did it with whoever you were in the house with. So you got a single gin and tonic each, and we filmed it in our kitchen, which was our dining room when we first started the business. And I got told off a lot on the internet for constantly interrupting my wife, which unfortunately that's every day. So that's what she puts up with every day. So we did things like that, but the time and expense it took to package up, it kept us busy, but it didn't really, the cost, we'd sell a bottle of gin at, let's say, 35 quid, but then we give free delivery. So 35 quid is 29 quid when you take the VAT off. The free delivery is 8 quid, so you're down at 21 quid. Then you've got one box. The air pack system is about 2 quid. By the time we've done it, it's easier to send it to distribution because they buy 600 at once. So it kept us going. I mean, our internet sales went through the roof, but nowhere near enough to sort of get anywhere close to what we were selling before. But it's just what it is. Like,
at what point did you start to think about exporting, and what kind of challenges have you had to overcome? What mistakes have you made?
We tried to go to every trade show in the world. That was a waste of money. I think we did a scattergun approach and throw enough shit and it sticks. There's loads of international trade shows and we tried to do them all at once and spent far too much time and money. Each international trade show would cost. I mean, the stand's 6 grand, 2 members of staff, 2 hotels, send the stock out. You're 12, 13 grand in before you've got any sort of return. We looked at it from day one. Well, that's a lie. We looked at it from about a year in. I think the way we grew the business originally was, knocking on doors, and we'd go to wine shops because they were you'd always speak to the owner in a wine shop for the most part, independent wine shops. They'd buy cases there and then, whereas bars was a bit harder. But yeah, export, thinking you can crack America. To take it back to music, Oasis tried to crack America with all the money in the world and couldn't do it. And it's the same thing when you're trying to crack America with a drinks brand. There's 50 states. That means there's 50 different laws. And just because you import, it's not like in the UK where you import into London and you can send it anywhere. You can't cross border lines, and then because they've got different taxes and everything else, and they've got something called the triple lock system, which basically means 3 different people want money versus 1. So that I went to India recently, and if they were trying to buy a bottle of gin off me for, I think it was like £3, and the glass cost 160. The cork cost 40p, the label cost 80p. I'm like, well, how am I producing this? But they've got, you know, the likes of Diageo that are out there basically selling at a loss. So the statistic about India in terms of the people that reach the drinking age in India every single year is the population of Australia. So that's why everyone's trying to establish a market in India, but everyone's doing it at a loss at the moment.
When you enter such a crowded marketplace, how did you not let yourself get beat up by comparison to the other more established?
That is actually a really good question. There's one sort of golden rule we sort of run by, and it's something that I did way before we owned a business together. And I've always had it, and you know, it comes from necessarily certain things in my childhood. But it's, I only worry about things I can control, and that's the only, for me, that's the only way you can. And you know, certainly for you guys in the room, like, there's no point worrying that someone's got that or someone's done this if it's out of your control. And again, that's where the sort of mantra, oh, fuck it. Like, so when we built the new distillery, Greenall's, which is one of the oldest distilleries in the country, had a brand called Thomas Dakin. They'd announced in 2018 that they were going to build this amazing distillery. And it's literally 2 streets parallel to where we were. And then as we were like, oh, well, listen, we can't compete with their money. There's no point fucking worried about it. But we still wanted to do our own. And it just so happened that finally when we found a site, it was, you know, 2 streets over. You're like, well, that's not ideal. But they've not started on site yet. Oh, fuck it. We'll just carry on. And then we announced that we were going to do, we set a press release saying we've submitted our application in December, I think it's like December 12th, 2018. January 7th, 2019, they announced we're starting on site, we're amazing, we're going to open. And we're like, fuck it. Well, again, not ideal, but it was that whole thing. You can't worry about what they're doing. Like, our plan is to open our own. We need a new distillery because we need a bigger sale still. And if we're doing that, we're doing it in the city centre and we're doing it with glass front and everything else. And, you know, the 2 things have to be separate. You just have to focus on what you're doing and almost have the blinkers on and say, well, just fuck everyone else. Like, if I'm focusing on what I'm doing, then someone will want what we're doing. I mean, granted, every single day, I walk past that site every single day. Because there was someone that it first started off with people like clearing the building, like, oh, maybe they are. And then week after week, I'm like, I'd literally climb up and I'd be like, just a man sat there. And it was literally just a man on security sat there. And this is while we were still going through planning applications. Then we got our approval. So we got our approval in February when I was away. We started on May 1st. And when we started on site, there was like 60 men on site. And I'm still going past every day going, I don't think they're doing this. And then we opened, and then I've since heard 2 months ago, my friends and architects, he was in the tender for this building to turn it into an apartment block. So if we'd have worried about that they're opening a distillery around the corner, we would have never built that one there. We might have put brakes on. If we'd have put the brakes on much later, COVID would have hit. The bank sure as shit wouldn't have lent us £1 million. And so it would never happen. So I think for us, it's just, I can't worry about anyone else. People do whatever they want to do. This is what we can do, and this is what's in our ability to control. And that, you know, you can only control what you can control, and everything beyond that is kind of irrelevant.
So, it's like a phrase, lips to...
liquid to lips.
What does that mean?
I'll show you. If you get a glass. It means literally, if you're so confident in what you do, you open the bottle, you pour it out and say, try it. If you don't like it, you're welcome. If you don't like it, that's fine, but I'm so proud of what I do. And the more people that try your product, you are growing your ability to sell that product. So, you know, we're going against the BBC Good Food Show, you'd sample in the region of 40,000 samples over the course of a weekend, and it's more about the more people try it, the more people hopefully will say, "Oh, I like that. I might not buy it today, but in 3 or 4 months' time, they'll see it on the shelf and go, oh, I did like that," and then buy it. And that it by only doing that and constantly letting people try it, rather than just them having never tried it before and going, "Oh, it looks all right. I'm not sure." And so literally, the more people try it, we are growing our ability to sell it because we believe our product's amazing. And so, it might not be for everyone, but we're so confident in what we've made that and the quality of which we've made it that, yeah, Liquid's Lips, the more people try it, that we are growing our ability to sell it.
Remind us of the name of the restaurant.
It's called Three Little Words. So that is next to the distillery. So it's all one and the same. The bar's Three Little Words. The 3 little words aren't defined. It could be gin and tonic, could be I love you, could be drink, dine, distill. We've never sort of formally said what they are, but yeah, 3 little words on Watson Street.
So please check it out in the spirit of what these guys are doing, keeping it
Nice.
local. Thank you. Anyway, yeah, do check it out. Do go and we're gonna have a chat about whether we do our December one there.
Yep.
In the evening. So can we please thank our guest Seb?